Welcome, dear viewers. You're watching the Ruslan Belov channel, and in today's episode, we'll take a detailed look at the geopolitical and frontline situation as of March 1st, 2026. Over the past 24 hours, a truly extraordinary number of major events have taken place, so let's get straight to the point. Let's start with the reports from Ukraine. From early this morning, Ukraine's Ministry of Defense published data on a new overnight attack by the Russian armed forces. Strikes reportedly targeted energy infrastructure facilities and military objectives once again. According to the Ukrainian ministry, Russia deployed 123 strike drones during the night operation, of which 110 were allegedly intercepted by air defense systems. At the same time, reports are coming in about the growing intensity of the Russian offensive on the Sumy direction. A very interesting tactical pattern from the Russian command is clearly emerging here. The mechanics work as follows. The Russian army launches an active assault on a specific sector of the front. To illustrate this, we can recall 2025, when Russian forces were pushing hard on the Zaporizhzhia segment near Velika Novosilka. In the second half of 2025, they managed to make serious gains there. However, as soon as Russian advance units reached the Haicha River, the Ukrainian General Staff was forced to urgently rush substantial reserves there to salvage the situation. The AFU organized a counterstrike on the northern flank, after which Russia's advance on that sector either halted entirely or slowed to a minimum. But the key point is this. At the exact moment Kiev pulled its fire brigade of reserves to the Zaporizhzhia direction, Russian forces dramatically ramped up their assault tempo in a completely different location, in the north near Sumy and Kharkiv. Apparently, this scenario is repeating itself. Russia's army will continue advancing on these northern lines, likely without encountering critical resistance, right up until the AFU is forced to pull its units away from other sectors and send them back towards Sumy and Kharkiv to plug the breach and attempt to reclaim lost territory. And with a very high degree of probability, the moment Ukrainian reserves arrive in the north, Russian forces will ease off there and unexpectedly strike somewhere new, for example on the Kupiansk direction. This is precisely the swing tactic that the Russian General Staff is actively employing right now. The success of this strategy stems from the fact that since 2025, the Ukrainian army has been relying on static defense through FPV drone operators, minimizing the use of conventional infantry due to serious manpower problems, including desertion. The Russian side, not suffering from a similar personnel shortage, is skillfully turning this enemy vulnerability to its advantage. Now let's go through the Sumy sector in more detail, where extremely important changes occurred today. Information about Russian advances here is being disseminated primarily by pro-Russian sources. According to their latest data, Russian forces have significantly strengthened their positions inside the settlement of Kondratievka. The territorial control map has changed over the past 24 hours, and we can now confidently state that between 35% and 40% of the village is firmly controlled by Russian troops. Somewhat to the east, continuous assaults on the AFU's second defensive line around Sumy are ongoing. Fighting is taking place in the direction of Mala Korchakovka, Nova Sich, Krapivshchina, and Marine. There have been developments on this vector as well. In addition, from the direction of Yunakivka, Russian assault units are pushing southward. Their objective is clear: to encircle the settlement of Sadki, located to the east. An important detail, a large forested area stretches near Sadki. The Russian command intends to bring it under its control, but is doing so through a clever flanking maneuver from the south in order to cut off the main supply routes. It appears that the fate of this local bridgehead will be decided within the very nearest days. But the hottest news is coming from the eastern flank of the Sumy direction, from the area around Myropolye. Today, pro-Russian analysts reported that Russian advance units have not merely approached the outskirts of Myropolye, but have managed to establish a foothold on the northeastern edges of the settlement. Effectively, the official battle for this settlement, which holds strategic importance for the entire Sumy front, has begun. Summarizing the picture around Sumy, we can state that Russia's offensive is proceeding along three simultaneous vectors. From the north, with a broad envelopment from Kondratievka to Yunakivka. From the east, in the Myropolye zone, and from the southeast, with a broad front in the area of Hrabovsky and Pokrovka. Fighting is intense everywhere, though no fresh details have come in from the southeastern flank over the past 24 hours. Moving slightly south on the map, we see fierce cross-border fighting along the Hrayvoron, Velika Pisarivka, Oleksandrivka line. The internet is flooded with fresh video footage of powerful strikes against AFU positions along the border in the vicinity of these villages. There is a strong impression that this is precisely where the Russian armed forces are preparing to launch a push toward Kharkivka, a settlement of critical importance as it sits on the railway line connecting Sumy and Kharkiv. Most likely, a sharp intensification of offensive operations on this stretch is only a matter of the nearest future. We now move to the Kharkiv direction, where pressure from the Russian border also continues. Yesterday evening, on February 28th, Kharkiv came under a combined attack using missile weapons and kamikaze drones, which caused large-scale fires throughout the city. Regarding ground advances, the day before yesterday, Russia's Ministry of Defense officially announced successes in the area of Neskuchny. Based on their report and data from the North Troop Grouping, we have updated our interactive map. Russian forces are currently massing in compact forest strips between Liptsy and Neskuchny, specifically in this grid square. FPV drone crews of the North Grouping are already actively working there, preparing the ground for an imminent infantry advance. Further east on this same direction, Russian units are breaking through from Staritsia toward Izbitska, Ternova and Zilin, advancing along the border. The epicenter of fighting has now shifted to a large forest belt along the border zone, and the Russian army is pushing through there quite dynamically. The overarching goal of this maneuver is to form a continuous bridgehead stretching from Liptsy all the way to Vovchansk. The large forest area southwest of Vovchansk is currently the Russian forces' #1 objective. The strategic concept behind the entire North Grouping's operation is evident. They need to approach Kharkiv close enough to force the AFU to pull their barrel and rocket artillery far to the south and southwest of the city. This will create the necessary buffer zone and deprive the Ukrainian side of the technical ability to carry out mass strikes against energy infrastructure in the Belgorod region. We now move to the Lyman sector, where the front has also come into motion. It appears that the protracted series of battles for the defensive line Sviatohirsk, Yarova, Drobyshev is drawing to a close. Over the past 3 days, a clear shift in favor of the Russian army has emerged here. Yesterday, we already reclassified Drobyshev as a grey zone, following footage showing a Russian flag in the center of the settlement. And today, confirmation of Russian advances in the Yarova area itself has come in. We are witnessing the final stage of consolidating a powerful bridgehead in the Sviatohirsk-Drobyshev quadrant. This is a clear indicator that the battle for the city of Lyman itself is entering its final phase. On the Sloviansk direction, the status quo is being maintained for now. Russian aviation and artillery are methodically working over Ukrainian positions in Fedorivka Druha and Reznikivka. The heaviest, most grinding fighting is currently centered on those two villages. Since Russian forces are gradually biting into the defenses inside both settlements, we can expect the map here to require an update soon as well. On the Kostiantynivka direction, intense fighting continues on the approaches to the city. Today, fresh footage of strikes against AFU temporary deployment points inside Kostiantynivka itself appeared online. It's worth noting one nuance. Following the recent blowing of the dam to the northwest of the city, many experts, ourselves included, had forecast an imminent breakthrough of the Ukrainian defenses on the southwestern and eastern outskirts of the settlement. Nevertheless, if you study the fresh geolocations of objective control footage, it becomes clear that the fighting is still centered on the city's perimeter. The Ukrainian garrison is for now capable of holding this defensive line. We move on to the Dobrailsk sector, from which important clarifications arrived today. According to data from both pro-Russian experts and pro-Ukrainian cartographers, Russian advance units have reached the northwestern outskirts of the settlement of Hrushine. The infiltration process is in full swing, and even Ukrainian resources are acknowledging that no more than 15% of the village's territory remains under confident AFU control. This is a harbinger that Hrushine is on the verge of falling completely under Russian control. The fall of this node will open up operational freedom of maneuver for the Russian armed forces. They will be able to advance unimpeded to the southwest, striking Serhivka from the northeastern flank, and also develop the offensive toward Dobrailsk itself and Matyasheve, southwest of Dobrailsk. For the Ukrainian formations currently squeezed into the area of Shevchenko, Svitla and Vodyanske, such a scenario would be catastrophic. As for the Zaporizhzhia segment of the front, the line of contact there remained unchanged over the past 24 hours. We now turn to unprecedented world-scale news from the Middle East. Today, official Iranian state media and affiliated resources officially confirmed Supreme Leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was killed as a result of an aerial bomb strike on Tehran. And the most astonishing element of this story is the timeline. This did not happen in the evening, nor at night, nor at noon, but in the early morning of February 28, 2026, literally during the very first wave of strikes on the Iranian capital, in the opening minutes or hours of the conflict. But what is even more remarkable, left without their lifelong leader, Iran did not cease military operations for even a single second, continuing its massive bombardment of Middle Eastern states targeting the United States and Israel. Let's take a look at the satellite imagery. This is what Ali Khamenei's residence and working complex looked like yesterday, before the strike. And here is a fresh photograph of the aftermath. As you can see, the grand building complex has been almost completely wiped off the face of the earth. It bears repeating that Iran's leadership concealed the fact of the Ayatollah's death until evening. Obviously, during this time, emergency closed-door consultations were underway with government offices in Moscow and Beijing on the question of what to do next and how to break this news. However, keeping it secret any longer became physically impossible. Israeli media had already started leaking the information. And yesterday evening, the US president poured fuel on the fire by posting on social media that Khamenei, whom he called one of the most evil people in world history, was no longer alive. Furthermore, the American and Israeli leadership simultaneously addressed the citizens of Iran directly, calling on them to take to the streets, stage protests, and seize power in their own country. At the same time, both Washington and Tel Aviv made it starkly clear: the bombing of Iranian territory will not stop and will continue for exactly as long as it takes. Assessing the overall situation, yesterday's events demonstrated one thing: a decapitated Iran has not surrendered. The military continued an uninterrupted barrage of ballistic missiles at American facilities throughout the Middle Eastern region. In footage being circulated, filmed by passengers aboard civilian airliners flying overhead, the contrails from ballistic launches are clearly visible. A number of experts have suggested that Iran was attempting to deploy its hypersonic or supersonic weapons against targets in Israel and US bases. However, according to information from multiple sources, absolutely all of these missiles, whether ballistic or hypersonic, were successfully intercepted by American systems over Iraqi territory. There is video footage of these intercepts in Iraqi airspace, from which the Iranian missiles never reached Israeli soil. The geography of Iran's retaliatory strikes is staggering in its scope. Under fire were the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, Israel, and the northern provinces of Iraq, specifically Erbil, where a US military base is stationed. The internet is buried in footage of direct hits, powerful explosions, and destruction. Iran's primary targets have been American military facilities, air bases, and port infrastructure. Reports also came in of a direct strike on the CIA headquarters building in the UAE. Toward evening, following the acknowledgement of Khamenei's death, the Iranian government issued a menacing announcement. They promised that today, March 1st, they would deliver a blow of such crushing force that humanity has never witnessed anything like it. The US president responded to this threat with lightning speed, advising Tehran to abandon the idea, warning that if America were struck again, the joint US-Israeli response would be so powerful and so devastating in its consequences that it would go down in history. Speaking of today specifically, March 1st, 2026, the exchange of devastating blows shows no sign of abating. Iran continues to methodically strike Bahrain, Qatar, and the UAE, with dozens of confirming photographs being published. Meanwhile, US aviation and naval forces, together with Israel, continue to level targets in Tehran. The majority of destruction footage is coming from the Iranian capital, though reports have also been published on the destruction of launch silos and missile complexes in other parts of the country. Against this backdrop of escalation, Chinese and Russian diplomats are issuing categorical demands to immediately cease fire, come to the negotiating table, and return the resolution of the Iranian crisis to the diplomatic sphere. At the same time, several Russian political analysts and economists are already forecasting that this large-scale Middle Eastern war will send oil prices through the roof, potentially breaking the $100 per barrel threshold in the shortest possible timeframe. This means that for a number of major global geopolitical players, this conflict is becoming enormously profitable. We will be watching closely as this historic crisis around Iran unfolds, but it is already clear that the situation has been pushed to the absolute limit. That brings our today's episode to a close, dear friends. A huge thank you for your attention. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button on this video. Wishing you all the very best.